Allen Sircy is our guest tonight on OpenLine, and we are talking about Southern ghost stories. He is an author of several books about ghost stories in our area and surrounding cities. So if you want to chime in on this one, give us a call, 615-737-PLUS. We've been talking about your two new books out regarding Nashville, downtown and south part of Nashville so far. I want to talk to you about Broadway. We think honky tonks, it's thriving right now. That has not always been the case for Broadway. What do you know about it?
Well, it is wild. Broadway, in 1781, there was a big battle there between James Robertson, the settlers, and the Native Americans. When the settlers came in around that time, that was the Indians' hunting ground, and they didn't want the settlers there. So they built that fort. You see that little fort over by the river? It was actually a whole lot bigger. It was like 2 city blocks up on Church Street. Well, the Indians kept trying to bait them out so they could ambush them. Well, they wouldn't take the bait. Well, that morning in 1781, they took some pot shots at the fort, and a bunch of settlers ran out and just ambushed them. Well, they rode down their horses all the way to Broadway, what is now Broadway, the corner, I think 4th or 5th and Broadway. And there was some tall grass there, and there were 300 Native Americans laying in wait for them. So it was like 20 settlers and 300, and it was a rout. So during the confusion, some Indians broke away and tried to steal the settlers' horses, because that was a brand new car for them.
Sure.
And the other guys were just getting pummeled, they're getting attacked, they're getting shot at. Well, Charlotte Robertson, James Robertson's wife, sees what's going on, so she unleashes the hunting dogs out into the field to attack the natives. So when that happens, they're trying to steal horses, they're trying to fight, the dogs come out. Well, all that confusion, the settlers kind of regrouped and ran back to the fort, and they closed the walls, and they were okay. But you had, I think, 12 or 13 guys died right there along where Broadway is now. So it's now all these tourist traps and honky tonks, but a big battle in 1781 took place right there. It's just been lots of time, but it really happened. So
what have you learned about what people report on Broadway?
Oh, there's stories of Tootsies, there's stories of, what's that, Savannah Candy Kitchen. Like pretty much every business or every other business on Broadway has a story about seeing things, seeing shadows, hearing noises. 2nd Avenue, I've noticed in my research, there's one year during Reconstruction, there were 12 fires on 2nd Avenue in one calendar year. See, fire codes is it's something I think that caused a lot of these ghost stories. Up until I think 1855, there were no fire codes in Nashville. And even after that, the buildings that were built there, they're just waiting to burn down.
Right.
Because back then, it's a bucket brigade from the Cumberland River to battle the fires. So by the time they get situated, the whole block's engulfed in flames. Even when you get those horse-drawn fire engines still, it's just the fire engulfs the thing. Because they can't fight it. There's not enough technology.
So there were a lot of fatalities. Oh, yeah. And then hence stories.
And there's a story, I think it's where the old Hooters was on 2nd Avenue. It was a boarding house. I found a newspaper article. This guy lost his job, or his wife left him, and he went there and just drank himself to death. And now upstairs where that boarding house used to be, they see shadows and hear things, and the girls that worked in the restaurant would see things dart around the building at night, and so it's pretty wild. It's sad all those buildings are gone now, or they're trying to figure out what to do with them.
Transformed. Yeah. Well, how do you find out about this? I mean, you talk about the workers down there saying, I see these things, or researching articles. Like, what do you do?
Just talk to people who work in those buildings, and a lot of just reading on newspapers and trying to, like, I'll read about an event, and then I'll go down there and, hey, you guys haunted? Yeah, man, how did you know? It's like, well, this place caught fire 40 or 400 years ago. You know, it's just, I kind of have an inkling just from what I've read, or if there was a murder, you just kind of put 2 and 2 together and just go digging.
Do you look for stories that kind of match up when people say, well, we hear someone walking the halls at night, or we hear, do you think, let me see if I can get this corroborated, or is it, how do you do it?
Yeah, it's just like if there was a fire, or like what's the building where the Copenhagen Museum is on 2nd? It caught fire, I guess it was in the late 1800s. And they're fighting the fire, and a fireman walked over to an elevator shaft and fell through it. And now they see a guy walking around the building at night. So it's really wild. You kind of piece stuff together like that.
Obviously, we have a long history here. The Civil War plays a big part of it. Does that also mean we have a lot of ghost stories surrounding that?
Oh yeah, the South Nashville book. When the Union took Fort Donelson, Fort Henry in February 1862, they marched into Nashville. The mayor of Nashville said, hey, I give up. We don't want to fight. So once that happened, they spread out and took Springfield, Murfreesboro, Franklin, Gallatin, anywhere they had railroad hubs and waterways, because they were trying to get from Nashville to Murfreesboro, Chattanooga, down into Georgia, Atlanta, Savannah, up into South Carolina. They divide and conquer. You keep Hood away from Lee, divide and conquer. That's what they did. But yeah, the South Nashville there's all kinds of things happen down there because they fought over there. Was it Gransbury Lynette over in South Nashville? There's a warehouse across the street where all this big action took place. And the lady's like, oh yeah, we see shadows, rocks get thrown around the warehouse, so we don't know where they come from. Just weird stuff like that happens right where they fought across the street.
Any ghost stories locally where these ghosts are up to no good?
You know, it's kind of like a common misconception. I've done this for several years now, and I counted probably 3 fingers something mean's going on.
Oh, really?
It's mostly just mischievous stuff. Like there's a place in Gallatin that's haunted, and they'll say, Swaney Swift's, it's a hamburger joint. Like the girls walk up the stairs, somebody will twirl their hair, or they come in the morning and find things moved around. This guy told me he walked down the stairs and he looked over to the bar, and there's his coworker, her apron strings are untying themselves in the back, and he looked over and said, hey, and they just dropped, went limp. So it's mischievous stuff like that. Nothing really mean is gonna. I lived in a haunted house, and it was kind of just weird things. Lights would come on, but nothing nefarious.
Did you ever feel a presence? I mean, do you feel like I'm being watched, or what was your experience?
Well, I can tell you about an investigation I did in Franklin. During the Battle of Franklin, they fought down there on Columbia Pike, and when they were done, they marched to the square a mile away. Every building came to a hospital that night. Well, where the white building is, where Starbucks is on the corner of Franklin, that was it was a house that belonged to a businessman who had a restaurant, not a restaurant, but he had a store there on Main Street. So it got torn down in 1923. And they built a doctor's office. Well, the doctor, he worked there for a year or so, maybe less than that, and he caught a disease from a patient and died. So now the white building is now Starbucks on the corner, it's an eye doctor in the middle, and there's a mattress store on the other side. So I started researching the Franklin book, Southern Ghost Stories, Franklin, Tennessee, and in Starbucks, he said, oh yeah, there's a drummer boy in our basement. The eye doctor told me there's a bugler in our basement. The mattress guy's like, oh, there's something in the basement, I don't know what it is. So a buddy of mine, he has all this equipment. He's been doing this for a long time. We went up and we set up shop in the bottom of the basement of the eye doctor right there in the middle. So we're downstairs in the basement and just nothing's going on. So I get on my phone and I play the Battle Hymn of the Republic, you know, the Yankee fight song, and everything goes nuts. So we go upstairs, same thing, we're in the one of the rooms where weird things have happened. The doctors felt someone tap him on the shoulder and whisper to him. And just nothing's going on. Pull up my phone, Battle Hymn of the Republic, everything goes crazy. So in the middle of it all, the lady who works there, she said, hey, what's your name? My buddy has this box called a geoport, supposedly can make words from the other side. I'm not sure how it works. So all of a sudden we get Drake. And she goes, did you say Blake or Drake? And it went Drake a second time. And she goes, did you say Drake? It went, yes. So the next day I go to the archive, I start digging. And it turns out Thomas Jefferson Drake, from he was in the 10th Ohio, he died in the Battle of Franklin. Now I can't say he died where that building is now in the old house, but it's really weird that that drummer would respond to the music I was playing twice.
Yeah.
So it's just weird stuff like that where you can kind of put it together.
Now you tell this story like just nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
but you heard this with your own ears. Did you about fall over?
I mean, it's one of those things like, oh wow, you know, it's like a home run. You know,
yeah.
Yeah, you get stuff like that. It's.
I wonder, with all the tearing down in Nashville of these old buildings and building new ones, I mean, just everything is changing, so much development. Does that tend to stir up the ghost, or does it quiet them?
No, when you renovate a haunted house or you do things in a haunted building, they don't like that. There's a place in Gallatin. It was the old house belonged to Johnny Maddox, the ragtime piano player. His son told me when they redid it, they'd be up in the attic going through his records, and like things would get thrown at him. It's like, how dare you? We like things like they are. Just leave us alone.
Yeah.
It's just, when I was working on the old house, I used to live on Traveler's Rest. When we were working on some of the things in that home, that's when weird things would happen.
Like what?
Mirror threw itself off the wall, down the hall 8 feet.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk specifically about Gallatin.
Okay.
You brought in some very interesting pictures for us. I've seen a preview. You don't want to miss it. It's after this.